All right, so the first Golden Boot is going on. This is the first closed tournament since the return of the site, and it's gotten me inspired to think a bit more about closed and other stuff. When I put out this video, it'll probably be 2 weeks after that tournament ended. It's ending in a couple hours as of me recording this. I am probably going to come second. I think almost certainly at this point. Turds went on quite a run. He's going to beat me fairly comfortably for first. I think Ruffles is likely to get third, depending on if I've counted Doom Train's score correctly. And then in some... Tezuka third, I meant. Ruffles probably fourth. Deli and Doom Train and Wavy coming next. And then Akiyama and DJ. Maybe Minghu Ha or Addy will get somewhere in there. I'm not sure. They have enough games who are going to finish. But there's a whole crowd of players who are quite close, and I think all performed really well, and it could have gone any which way with a little luck differently, but pretty proud of second. All right, so we're going to be facing Turds in our first game, and I just want to talk about no combo closed. I think on first turn, it is very much about just making sure you can take everything. On both turns, it is all about fundamentals, good fundamentals. Never letting them secure cards if you can avoid it, always securing cards when you have the chance. Now, Turds is very good at this rule set, and I think it is somewhat first turn favored. If first turn plays formationally correctly and takes it every point they can, right? Always is able to do the formational move they need to do, it is a forced win for first turn. So especially against someone really skilled like Turds, we're going to have to try to give him as difficult captures as possible. He starts with a weakish corner. I think this is basically the best way to start on this rule set, because you want to maximize things you are capable of taking and minimize things your opponent is. So my instinct here is to play something like Jekt in 7, 1A, 8, 8, because that has an A facing out. Next turn, I'll go in 4 and also have an A facing out, and hopefully I can start building something difficult for them to handle. Now, ideally I would do it while at some point flipping 1, just to put a little more pressure on him to force him to have to recapture that at some point. But I don't see a way to do so. I could also go in 3, but I don't have an A down. I do have an A facing towards his card, but I don't have a way to recapture it if need be. Similarly, 926A, I don't have a recapture, so I'm not super comfortable with that. So I'm going to use one of my cards with an A to the right in 7, because my plan is to next turn go in 4. Now, if you're thinking, he blocks 4. Well, I want him to block 4. That's the goal. And Turds is a player very unlikely to actually block 4, because it immediately lets me be the first person to lock in a card, and that's going to be that's so valuable. That's such a big advantage. And he's going to have failed to keep his first turn advantage. Now, if he does go 4, there is the question of what I take with, because I'll want to be able to threaten a capture of his card in 4 from 5, and if he, for instance, has a 10 facing out from 4, I will not have a way to do that. But I will, no I will, because I could play 3, 7, 9, 9, and 2, and that threatens 9, 2, 6A and 5, and I can use 3, 7, 9, 9 because 1A, 8, 8 is my recapture for 8, or a recapture, though sadly I wouldn't have a recapture on that from 9, but I don't think I'd ever need one, because if you see, if he goes 4, I go 3, 7, 9, 9, and 2, he blocks 5, 1A, 8, 8, and 8, and 5 is already blocked, so I'll never need that recapture. Anyways, he's very unlikely to go for it. The formationally correct moves are to go in 3, 6, or 9. These are the only squares that don't give me a capture. I would guess he would go in 9, because it is more likely he'll have to set up against my A than against his 7. And 9 is the square that can set up against the A, but hopefully his hand starts to get overworked. He might need things that recapture the starter. He's going to need something capable of taking my 10, my A facing out. He's going to also need stuff capable of taking his card in 9. So hopefully by having one high number out facing, I can start building difficulties where it's difficult for his hand to have all the captures it's going to need to have. I think he has sent me a message. Alright. 6 is also possible. Against 6, the moves... Basically, against any move he does, I need to force him to try to be positionally correct by capturing something difficult to capture. So my main game plan here is to go the next move in 4, because it is likely he'd have to capture one of my 10s at one point, and that's going to be hopefully a difficult ask. On the other hand, if he goes in somewhere like 6, I could also try to throw a spanner in the works by playing in 3 or 9. Any square where potentially he doesn't have the capture and probably needs it. Alright, he does go 6. So really tempted to play 926A. I noticed he had used a double side numbers, 8s each way. So if I put 926A and 9, he'd need to have had another one of those in his hands. But I don't have any information that he doesn't. Just because he's shown one doesn't change the odds of the other cards having it. So one question is, which move gives him the fewest formationally correct paths? So I could play Kuja or Jekt, either 1 and 4, with an A facing out. Now, he did just potentially set up against 4, but even more than that, he still has formationally good moves there in 2 or 8 because both secure a card. However, if I play in 3 or play in 9, his only move to lock in a card is going to be in 2 or 8 respectively. So I think that is a more testing way to go at him. And so I think I'm going to start with 926A. I think it is worth flipping as 9884 because I am not guaranteed a flip of it later. I do have one way to flip it from above and 2 ways to flip it from the center, but I have cards that don't get that flip. So I think I'd rather take that flip when I have the opportunity to. And again, his only move that is positionally sound here is to go in 8. Anything else, and he has made a concession, and I should be able to tie if I can play formationally correct moves, and my hand provides for the rest of the game. And my hand seemed also pretty good at going down, not so good at going up, so I don't want the game facing up. But I think this is the move that makes it hardest for him to keep his first turn advantage. And as soon as that first turn advantage is dropped, as soon as he fails to take in a situation where he needs to capture, I start having chances to win if he fails one more time to capture something. So in this, what Turds himself has named the knight formation, because you can see the card in 1 is a knight's chess knight's move away from the card in 6, is a chess knight's move away from the card in 7. I believe the most testing way to play on second turn in this no combo rule set is to go in 3 or 9, because they have to have an exact card to maintain their advantage. If they do not have that exact card, I'm okay. Well, if I go in 4, I also sort of asks a question, but they can go in any of 2, 5, or 8 and lock in a card. And so that is a much less testing proposition. Doesn't mean it's always wrong, but I think it's usually right to go in 3 or 9. All right, responding to messages. I am still in the Discord. They did have it. Okay, but we can keep asking them questions. I think the 667A is probably a weaker card than the 188A. Sadly, they didn't show a card that can take the 9848 from 3, and they're definitely going to have one. But given that my move in 4... So I have 2 ways to play it. So one is given if my move in 4 will not capture the card in 1. So I'm going to need to be able to capture the card in 1. So 66A7 in 4 has a 10 facing out, hopefully hard for them to deal with. Though they did play the card in 6, and they haven't shown a card yet that could go in 5 and take a 10. There's a fair chance they have that. But as long as it doesn't have an 8 or higher facing up, then Jekt can capture 2 and put me in a pretty good spot. The other thing I can do is I could go in 5 myself. This makes it 5-5. If they go in 4, they're up 6-4, but then I know Jekt has the double capture in 2. I go 6-4. It's a difficult final double capture for them. They'll need to overpower a 10 and a 9. On the other hand, if I go in 5, they could also go in 3, locking in a card, and then we're in a guessing game that, you know, they'll lead 6-4. They're going to have the captures, I think, very likely. I'd force them to have to capture a 7 and a 9. I think there's an argument for going 5, but I think the more testing play is 4. Note, if they go 2 or they go 3, I can go 5 and I have at least a tie. And this forces them to be able to capture another 10, and I still have good chances if they don't have an 8er up left. If they do have the 8er up left, I do lose. But I think this is asking the most of them, forcing them to have the most good cards. And even if I lose this game, it doesn't necessarily mean I played badly, right? Because I gave them tests on cards that they had shown no examples of having control over. I had played the card in both 7 and the card in 9, so I had no evidence that they had either of those covered because they had never played on the diagonal or across from them in a way where they had a chance to set up. So they either had it in their hand or they didn't. All right, so we did a great job testing them, and now we're playing for the win because they did not have the capture in 5. We forced them to take another 10. They didn't have it, and now we can take 2 cards, go up 7-3, and force them to have the double capture. Turds is saying, waited so many years because I wished good luck rather than my normal insults. But I think this is exactly how you want to play second turn. Every turn I force them to take 10s or high numbers. And yeah, we get the win on second turn in a rule set that favors first turn against a very good player because we kept forcing them to have captures that are tough to just have all of. And they had the first, but they didn't have the second, and they didn't have the third. And if we can keep challenging them and get them to fail twice, we're going to get them. And we made the move where they had the fewest positionally correct replies. So it was hardest for them to have the cards. Well, if I had played in 4, even if they don't have the card in 5, instead of my move in 9, if I had played in 4, even if they don't have the card in 5, they probably have something to stick in 2 or 8. And so everyone else is still putting up GB games. Minghu Ha and Addy are doing quite well. I think Zero is actually doing pretty well too. Any of them might make a run into the kind of top 10 group. We'll have to keep an eye on that, but that will have finished way before anyone sees this. And I am very sure that Turds has won, and I think it is very likely I have come second. And I'm pretty pleased with that, though I'd really wanted the idea of I win the first chat tournament back and I win this 35-game closed tournament. I thought that would be a kind of fun statement. But no luck so far getting a game. Obviously, there are waits. Is there anything else to say about that last game? Yeah, I like their starter, though I'm not sure it made sense with the 7-4 A7 in their hand. Those two cards play really well off each other, right? Because the 7s play well, there are same walls, there's plus wall potential. But starting with one of them means the other one never really has the capture back in both spots. And I really like to have a lot of cards in my hand that have the capture back in both spots against my starters. Now, I talked a little about closed combo starters and how I do not like strong corners there. One reason for that is you often have to hold on, if you have an A9 corner, you might have to hold on to 2 cards to have the recapture, and you have no guarantee they're going to, give you the easy recapture there. So I don't, and in combo, it has the second problem that it is potentially combo fodder. Because the numbers facing out are so high, it is difficult for you at a later point to play next to them, because if they do have the combo, it's going to flip a lot of stuff. Well, if you have a low out facing card, it is much easier to play next to, because there is no risk of that card being comboed to your detriment. Of course, the card you just played might potentially be comboed, but you are first turn, so often you are holding off playing near your starter until the final moves of the game, when you can lock it in. So in non-combo, I think this changes a bit. All right. We'll go to my normal refrain against this dastardly opponent. In non-combo, I think the strong corner is a better play than it is in combo, because while you still have the problem of holding on to 2 cards, you do not have the problem of being combo fodder later in the game. So I think it makes more sense. We're on second turn again, which again means we want to challenge with the highest numbers possible. This means I think people overrate cards like 8-8, 7-6s, especially on second turn here. It is very useful to have enough power to keep questioning them, so 10s are really valuable. We have 10s in every direction but to the right. So I think this is a pretty decent hand. Even though we don't have too many double numbers, I think he's also unlikely to start with a corner with a big double number, and so we'll be able to try to work against what he does. Another weak corner, same corner, very similar card to last time. And again, I want to test. I want to immediately be asking questions. So one move that comes to mind is 3-9-A6. The downside of this move is I won't have something with the same amount of power down to be able to slot into 2, right? Because if I go in 3 and he goes in 9 or something, I'd love to play 2 and force him to try to take my downward 10s. The direction I do have two double numbers facing, the direction I do have two A's facing is left. So I'm very tempted to play with one of those with the intent of playing the other next to it next turn. Now, either one I can recapture with Barret and 2 if need be. So that's nice. It means I don't necessarily have to keep Mustadio. One potential problem is I have trouble recapturing my recaptures if needed, but I very much doubt I'll be needed to. Against a weaker opponent, I would be worried they'd play in 2, and I'd try to keep as much upward ability to capture as I could. Against a strong opponent, he's unlikely to force me to need to because he gives me free lock-ins. So my instinct right now is A5, 7, 5, and 3, with the intent to go 6, 6, 7, A, and 6 next turn and ask the question. On the other hand, it's usually my second card that's going to ask the key question. No, I think I like that play. I think this makes a lot of sense. Especially because if my card faces his, and he's going to play in 7, 8, or 9, unless he already has the capture in 2, he's not going to have time to set it up. So again, we're going to try to give difficulties. One thing I didn't note last game, a big thing well, not that big. No, ignore that. Yeah. So if he goes in 7, I'm probably going in 8. Because then their only formationally winning move is in 2, and there's just a good chance he doesn't have it. If he goes in 9, I think I'm... Where did I say I was going? If he goes in 7, I think I'm going in 6. If he goes in 9, I think I'm also going in 6. If he goes in 8, then I'm presumably going in 7 or 9 with Barret, with the A facing up. And this was one reason I used Yang 757A instead of 667A, because I wanted to sort of have redundant recaptures in 2. Now, if I use Barret, I have no recapture in 6, and this was kind of the downside of this move, is Barret is likely to be used in one of 7 or 9, and also is needed for 6. On the other hand, because it's a 10, and he doesn't have a chance to set up against it, it is much more likely my opponent's going to capture my corner from 6 than from 2, so having the recapture in 2 is worth more than the recapture in 6. It is nice that Barret has both squares, though. All in all, I feel a bit worse about this game than last one because I think I will be able to test them a little less. Force them to take high numbers a little less than I did last game. And specifically if they go 8 with a knight formation similar to last game, then 6 is suddenly not as good a move because he has good formational moves in 2 or 9, and I want to minimize the number of good moves he has. All right, goes in 7. Again, weak numbers. This makes tons of sense. I think this is a good move. I think fundamentally what he should be doing is making weak corners that... I suspect I'd play his hand exactly the same way. Weak corners that he has an easier time taking back. Now, I would like to go in 6. And then he kind of has to go in 2 to have an advantage. If he doesn't go in 2, I will want to be able to play something in 2 myself. 3-9-A6 would be ideal, because that's the hardest for them to take, but A2-9-7 would be fine. So I'm going to go in 6. Also, if they had used a card that worked in 2, I would know they had another card for 2, and I would be less tempted to play in 6, because I'd know they have 2 for sure, so I might look for different ways to test them. Here, I do want to force them to have 2. I don't want to use 7-8-5-8 because there's a fair chance I think I'm going to end up playing in 4. I don't want to use both of A2. I don't want to use A2-9-7 because I think that's just most of my critical power this game, and that threatens them most if they go in 2. I can't set up to make sure I can capture a 10 in 2, so probably either of 3-9-A6 or 6-6-7-A is fine. So the reason to use 6-6-7-A and 6 would be I keep my A down, so if they don't have 2, I can play in 2 with an A down. And that's really good. The reason to use 6-6-7-A, the reason to use 3-9-A6 and 6 is because then 6-6-7-A has a good recapture from 9, and not only is that a nice recapture with the 10 out, it also means that one of my cards other than Barret has some upward power worth keeping. So I think I'm going to go that way. but I think either move in 6 is kind of my main idea. I could also play in 2 or 4. 3, 9, a6, and 2 is probably a pretty good move, and something in 4 is probably a good move. I think against weaker players, I would be likely to go in 2 or 4 for reasons I can now get into. If I'd gone in 2, where is their winning move formationally? And this is not obvious because lots of people will go 4. And 4 is not winning formationally because they lock in 1 card in 1, but I potentially can lock in 2 cards going in 5. So if I had gone in 2, their correct move is 6. It locks in 1 card, but I can only lock in 1 in reply. If I go 4, I only lock in the card in 1. If I go 5, I only lock in the card in 2. And so if I go 2, it kind of forces them to go 6. Or if I go 4, it forces them to go 8. And a lot of players are not aware of this or will not handle this correctly, and you can get advantages there. As I said, though, Turz has just won this closed tournament, or is very likely to win it, is a tremendously good closed player. So I'm not going to assume they can't play formations correctly, which I would assume against a lot of people, because I think... Alright, so they hit Barrett as well. Shucks. How to test them as much as possible. So they're up 6-4. If I play Barrett in 4, or sorry, Janice Shala in 4, 7-8, 5-8, and 4, I go up 6-4. If they have the double capture in 5, they will go up 6-4. I have Mustadio. I don't have good plays there. I probably have to play Barrett in 8, and that's an easy capture. So the problem is I'm limited going right. That's a big problem. So Shala demands they take an 8. If they don't take the 8, then I'm in good shape. But 8s are not that hard to take. If I play Barrett in 5, that is my other way to lock something in. But even if they don't take anything from 4, it's just going to be 5-5, and I'm going to have weak numbers facing out. So the natural moves are 4 or 5, but it is very hard for me to put them to serious test there. And so I think this is looking a lot like a loss. I think I have to try Janice Shala. Now, they have played all left-facing cards and tried to put the game to the left. If I played 6-6, 7A, and 9, their correct move's in 5. That locks in 2 cards. They would go up 7-3. I could then probably double capture in 4, but it's so easy for them to capture Bosch at the end. So no, I don't think I can do that. I think I have to go in 4, and I think he got me this one. But again, you play the most testing things you can, and if they get you, they get you. I forced them to take a 10 that they had no chance to set up on, and that's really important, right? If I had played in 3 and then they had played in 1, I'd be quite confident they could take the 10. But I just got to keep giving them difficult stuff to take. And if they have this one, they have it. Nicely, if they play a 10 down, I can play Mustadio in 8, which would be better than playing Barrett there, or a 5 or less. If they have something like, I don't know, some card. They had it. So, okay. We'll say good game. And we will do the only capture we have. But they had to capture at every stage, and we don't. They had the 7-5-7-8 covered multiple ways. That is unlucky. And I think they get us back this one. But second turn is a disadvantage, and all you can do is give the test. Huh, did I have the tie in 9? No, I had flipped the card in 7. No, that was a tie. I didn't consider that. Why didn't I go in 9, or consider going in 9? Yeah, no, both lost. Okay, sorry. Totally brain dead. All right. I think that was about the best we could do there. We forced them to take a 10, and we forced them to take an 8. Alright, that's not that testing. I'm not sure the way the game played out, I could have forced them to take more. But probably could have, I guess. I'm overheating, so I've turned on the fan. Huh. They had the area where I wanted to play 10s well covered, and that made it difficult. Ah, another second turn. Alright, we'll wish them good luck. And we will try to test them. DJ, someone else who's placed really well in this closed tournament, tough opponent. Let's look at my hand. I have 2 A's to the right, 1 A to the left, and 1 A up. So again, it's second turn, gotta try to pose challenges. The spot I have covered with double numbers is the bottom left. So something like Orin, A387, or Laguna, 5A39, is very likely to end up in 7. I have some 9s. Sometimes you can test them with 9s. So when I talked about closed combo, I described the game as sort of the first phase is setting up synergy, the second phase is challenging them, and the third phase is making kind of the 50-50 calls. Second turn non-combo, we have to be challenging from the start. We have to be putting out numbers that are immediately likely to be tough for them to take, because we're never going to be comboed back on stuff. So we don't need to have that synergy to make sure we have as much combo potential as they do. We just have to make sure stuff is tough for them to capture. So that's what we're trying here. All right, they went with a weak corner, and even worse, because I think weak corners are good, they went exactly where I wanted to play. So that is already somewhat annoying. Now my hand is very good going left, and I think I'm going to try to make the game a bit left-directed, but how to do so properly. I don't have an A down, and when you don't have an A down, it is risky to go in 9. I love adjacent corners because sometimes they induce the in-between play, but it is risky to go in 9 because if they go in 2, I can't go in 1 or 3 with a 10 down, and as we saw from the first game, that's usually the best way to test them. So my instinct is just 6, 8, 9, 5 in 1 here. It gets a card out of my hand I don't want. I'm not seeing anything obvious with my other cards, and potentially that can be a bit testing. It's going to have an 8 to the right they'll probably have to take. Don't feel great about this one. I don't really care that I set up the same in 4. Like, you know, I had another card with the double capture there. I have ways to take both cards. You know, the same, not very meaningful. It's not really about that. It's about, I'm going to try to force them to take that 9 or that 8 later and keep trying to just make them take high numbers. And again, if they have it, they have it. Also, you want the high numbers to be ones they haven't seen on board before. So something I did well against Hertz that game was he had to have the card when I played the 8 to the right and 4. He had to have a card that could take that, like, right then. He didn't have time to play a move across from it or diagonal from it. You know, he doesn't know whether he has the card to take that. And he happened to be able to take that with a card with no leftward power, which was great for him, because it let him keep his good leftward power to sweep the end. But if he had had to use Terra in 5, Vinny would have not had the winning blow in 9 on the last move. So if it just happened to be a different number facing out, a 7 facing out or a 9 facing out or something, then I would have had at least a tie there. And so even in the situations where it goes bad and you lose because second turn is a disadvantage, it's not... You still just, if you challenge with numbers, you have very good chances to hold. And again, we're going to try to do that this game. DJ is also a very good close player, very good, I think, at this rule set. You can see from DJ's win-loss record, you know, very good win-loss record. Also one of the very few players to have completed every single card, which I certainly have not. I don't have any rares. I think I gave them all away. Yeah, so it goes in 6. And so I think our automatic move is 926A in 3 or in 9. Now, I played the card in 1 and not the card in 7, so there is a little more potential they can set up off 7, but I think very few people make weak corners thinking, ah yes, and this sets me up to capture the nearby 10s. I think they kind of chuck a bad card they don't like in a square that directs the game nicely. So I think my best chance is 9, 2, 6A, and 9. Again, I prefer the one where I flip something just because I am not guaranteed that flip later, and it's nice to not have to need it. You know, if I at some point play Laguna in 3 or Orin in 5, it is nice to not have to need that flip. What I like about this is I play in 9. Their only formationally winning try, their only move that locks something in, any other move doesn't, is to go in 8. And then, much like the first game against Herds, I can play 4 with another 10 facing out and force them to take 2 different 10s. And it just seems difficult for them to achieve that. And again, if they have it, I probably lose. And I actually have pretty bad cards for the end game if I have to use Jecht in 4, because Laguna is not a great card for going in 2 while taking the card in 5, which will be needed. And neither is Orin, because it is so weak facing towards 3. So unlike the first game where I ended up, winning, here I probably don't have any winning chances if they can go in 8. But if they don't have 8, I'm in really good shape. Note, I can take anything that goes in 3. So hopefully we're in pretty good shape here to at least get a tie and maybe a win. I'm gonna check my messages like an unprofessional person. So they did have 8. Everyone has it against me today. That's okay. We force them to have it again. If they have it again, we lose. But they have to have it every time, and we make them have to have it multiple times. And also, there's a good sign for this move, which is when they played 6, there's a fair chance they're making sure to set up against 4, and they already used a card that would go in 5. And they're not going to specifically look to have 2 cards that could go in 5 to take a 10. So having seen 1, it is less likely they have another. Of course, if they have, 6, 6, 7A, we just lose. That's fine. Despite the fact that there's a fair chance we're going to have lost 2 out of these 3 games, I think I've played really well. I think this has been about as challenging as you can get. Maybe the second game has some slight improvements, but I think, you make sure to test them with high numbers in places they haven't had a chance to set up against. And sometimes that gets them, sometimes it doesn't. Very luckily for me, and a bit of good luck, if they go in 2 or 3, or in 5 goes pretty well. Less well if they go in 3, because I cannot retake the card in 6. They have it again. What can I do? What can I do? Alright, well, Orin in 2 is so close to an auto loss. I think this is Orin in 3 has slightly better chances to hold, but this is almost certainly just going to be a loss unless they happen to have something that's pure up-down, which is what I have to hope for. But if they do, that would still take Orin's 3, so I'd rather force them to take 2 things. But, sometimes they just have all the plus walls on stuff they, stuff that you set up rather than them setting up. So, 1 win, 2 losses. Perhaps not. They did have the up-down. All right, good call by me at the end. Win, loss, and tie. Now, we might think that it is random that they ended up with that card. That I'm very lucky they had that at the end. And in one sense, that is completely true. It is quite lucky they had that. In the other sense, every move they made had to use a card, right? They could not have used A4, 9, 5, and 8. They could not have used it in 5. It didn't fulfill the roles. So because I challenged them every turn, it was more likely for them to end up with a card that just didn't have use on this board. So somehow, despite them having the 2 things I really needed them not to have, we still snuck out a tie there on second turn. Be nice to get a first turn sometime, but you can't have everything. And I don't think I would play the first turn very differently than they have. I think they both started with weak corners, which, as I've said, I think is just correct on this rule set. or if not correct, then very viable. It does a much better job directing the game than a center starter. There's lots of reasons to like weak corners. Half-strong corners, I think, are probably better with combo on than in this rule set, because the half-strong corner, it's just not... What does it get you that the full weak corner doesn't, right? You probably have one card that can take it back both ways, that can take the strong side and the weak side, so you're a bit overly locked into a single card, while having two weaknesses, and two weaknesses that are often weak to your entire hand, makes it easier to hold on to whichever card you want at whichever point and adjust to what the opponent does. So that tends to be my preferred starter, and both Turds and DJ have started that way. Alright, 1-1-1, all on second turn, and all when they've always had the captures. They keep having the captures, right? And so I think given that is a good start. The one game that was a bit messy was the second game, where I didn't find enough ways to challenge. But still, that was not far from a tie. The third game may have looked worse because I could have so easily lost 7-3, but at the same time, I forced them to take multiple 10s. And multiple 10s that they could not have set up against, so I feel much better about that than a game where I set up a 10 and an 8 they couldn't take. The first game was, of course, ideal, because I forced them to, I think, take 3 different 10s, and they could only take 1. The second game, I forced them to take 1 10, and they could take it, and I lost. The first game, I forced them to take 3 10s, they could take 1, and I won. The second game, I forced them to take 2 10s, they took both, and I managed to tie. So, sort of, if we can force them to take 2 to 3 10s a game, we're very likely kind of in that tie-win range, though this is, of course, a small sample. Will anyone else take our game? Are there any other games happening? I will get us to the Watch Games menu. Alright, trade players playing Joker. Ah, this is all open. Trade player, of course, being Delial. So this is going to be a great game. We will keep an eye on this one. And we have some close combo games. So these two games are GB games. And the other games are not. Would be interesting. Doom Train played really well this Golden Boot. After 25 games, he had 2 losses. After 15 games, he had 0. Just rock solid. Blizzard did not do as well and kept insulting his own play. But I find Blizzard a really tough player to play against. I think, like, I've talked about my close combo strategy and my close combo primer, where I go kind of synergy, challenge, 50-50s. And Blizzard challenges much earlier than I do. And I think that means he has worse results against some players like Seto types, who are very good at exploiting that, but is a tough matchup personally for me because I'm not quite always ready to deal with challenges that early. So I think he has a style that is difficult for me to face. But I think for the GB, it was a tough style because it takes on a lot of risk. He's doing a lot of overpowering, and if the other person is the combo, he's in trouble, and that's going to make his losses often bigger than his wins. So Wavy wants combo. And I, of course, am trying to show non-combo play, and that I think it's quite interesting. So we got second turn for the 4th game in a row. So this sort of balances my combo video, having all first turns. I notice we have lots of 10s up. We have a 10 to the right and a 10 down. We have very little left power, but we do have some double numbers that can help cover for that. Not going to spend the time to figure out the Deli Turds game, but I'm excited. You know, it's always fun when 2 great players go out at it, and it's trade, so that's fun. This game, curious what happens. Okay. Can you combo a 1? Almost certainly not on this rule set, right? Because there's not going to be any same wall or plus walls or anything because there are no 10s around. So This looks like the question is, can Blizzard take the 8 or not? And the answer is no, so we have a tie. Doomy proves rock solid as ever. Alright, another weak corner. Again, I think this is just what people do. And we're going to start trying to set up 10s of our own. Our 10s face up, so I think we're going to start with something in 7 with the intention to follow up in 8. Sadly, if I go in 7 and they go in 4, I have nothing difficult facing left. So maybe there's some argument for going in 3. Yeah. So if I played 8-6, 8-4, and 3, one thing is it directs the game upward, which my cards are good at. If they go in 8, I'm happy to go in 7 or 9. Another thing is, if they go in, wherever, if I go in 2, I do force them to take the A potentially. But if I don't, it's easy for me to play off 7s facing down to plus other 10s facing out from 4 or 6. So I think this is the way. And my main reason for avoiding 7 is I don't like my position after they go 4. And I'm assuming these players are good, so I'm assuming after I go in 3, they are likely to go in 7, 8, or 9. For some reason, I never even checked if I could take this back, which of course I can't. So this may have been an appalling move, but even then it's not so bad. Because if they do call the bluff in 2, which they're very unlikely to do, even then the L is fine for me, right? I play something like A7, 5, 7, and 4, and I'm threatening, even if they have a 10 down, I'm threatening a same in 5. It's easy for me to set up double captures in 5. If they block 5, I have 7, A8, 4, and 7. I'm already forcing them to take a 10. I think I will be the first one to have secured. I will have high numbers out facing. If they call my bluff, it's not that big a problem. There's a reason I didn't even check if I could recapture, which was dumb of me, explicitly stupid of me, but also not a problem. Now, I should assume they do have 6 now. I think it would be very surprising if they don't have 6. They got to set up against it, and they used a card that could take in 6 already. So, there's no way they use their only capture in 6 up. However, I may still want to go in 2, because their correct play is in 4, and they might go in 6 instead. I could also go in 6 myself and force them to go 8, but they set that up, so they almost certainly have it. So I don't like the look of that. And the question is kind of which card do I want to use? I don't love my hand here. But I think I'm going to force them to go... Yeah, we'll go here. They can take the 10, but I'm forcing them to take the 6. And maybe their cards that take those are redundant. And after that, I could play something like 7, 8, 8, 4 in 7, and potentially force them to take more 10s. So we put 1 10 down, it didn't threaten them, they had it well handled. Clearly they had it well handled multiple ways, because their starter actually could deal with my 10 down as well. So they shouldn't go in 5, because if I go in 6, I lock in 2 cards. They shouldn't go in 6, because if I go in 5, I lock in 2 cards. They should go in 4. They do not. So now we are in great shape. We should have at least a tie. I should make sure I have a threat in both 4 and 8. The only way I can have a threat in 8 is if I have a 7 or 5 facing down. That is easily accomplished. I want to maximize my out-facing numbers. The maximum left I can have if I go in 8 will be a 7. I can get a 7 no matter what I have facing down, because A7, 5, 7 and A5, 7, 7, whichever one goes in 5, the other has 8. And 7, 8, 8, 4 is my best card for 4, so it honestly just doesn't matter what I play in 5. I'm going to have at least a tie. With some chances to win if they can't take something. And they almost certainly have the capture, but On second turn, we established a tie/win, and we established with multiple moves to go. They should have played Cait Sith in 4, I think. But Frog potentially then has an up problem, and it's just so easy for first turn to run out of cards that have captures needed. So we'll say GG, and we tied. How long have we been going? 45 minutes? Let's try for one more. See if I can sneak a first turn out of this. Delhi has gone this sort of diagonal corner play. Many people like this setup a lot more than I do. I don't go into it very often on first turn, but it can be a way of saying, I don't like anything going on, and this forces the most synergy and clarifies the position. But it tends not to be what I like to do. It just gives away a free square and 8, and especially right now, because we're talking about fundamentals, non-combo closed play, is all about those good fundamentals, all about those give them the biggest challenge you can, make sure you're formationally correct. If we get a first turn, I'll get to talk about formationally correct play on first turn, but we've already talked about it a bit when we've talked about opponents' options. So I am really focused right now, and Turds is going to play 7, 9, 8, 4, and 8, I assume, and just take the free square. Now, it's not necessarily free forever due to combos, but it is. He does not. Well, then he probably figured this out. The main point being, Delhi cannot go in 8 without a 10 to the right, the weakness of strong corners, because then Turds combos back really hard with 9-5, 9-5. So if we were kind of from the formational perspective, not doing extensive calculating, 8A5-6 and 8 is the only move that does not give Turds that square for free, because Turds is looking to occupy it next turn, most likely. Turds does combo back with 9-5, 9-5, and 6. Does Delhi have the tie there? So 8, 6, 7, 8, and 3 captures 1 back, makes him down 6-4, and Turds cannot capture that, and Zell will capture something facing down. So it is likely Delhi can tie by going in 8. Turds could also respond to that by going somewhere like 1. 1 is often a good square. Then Delhi can block 5. He doesn't have a great way to block. Anything is comboed. Sorry, block 6. Anything's comboed. So maybe 8 loses to 1. 8 probably loses to something in 1. Delhi's in trouble. And we got a game. We got our 53rd second turn in a row, but hopefully we can put pressure on. I'm going to put in the Delhi Turds game because I am excited to have records for games. I've been keeping records of every open game I see, and it's nice to have some stats. So what was the move order here? Delhi started with 9-3-6A in 9. Turds played 7-5-7A in 5. Delhi went 7-8-4A in 7. Turds, I think very cleverly, went 7-9-8-4 in 4. And now Delhi has a problem, which there's some chance he finds his way out of. Delhi's very clever. There's always, clever stuff like 8A5-6 in 3, setting up 8-6-7-8 in 2. And problem there is Turds can probably just hold on to Umaro, and if 8-6-7-8 ever goes in 2, Umaro goes in 1 and combos back enough. So not sure ideas like that are good, but it is to say there's always ways to complicate. Alright, they go in 5. We haven't seen a 5-starter yet. I don't really believe in the 5-starter. I also think this is a pretty powerful, in this rule set, I think this is a pretty powerful card. It covers multiple corners 10s, and we're going to keep trying to give them 10s to take. So my instinct is to start sticking 10s facing out. We've got a few ways to do that. Ideally, I would be able to capture it, if need be. So that makes me start to think that the 10 facing out should be an 8 or 9. I don't see immediately a setup somewhere else to recapture one of the 10s. In either 8 or 9, my next move is likely to be a6, 9, 3 in the square next to it with the 10 facing out again. Just force them to have the most 10s. And also force them capture the most 10s, but force it the same way. So, you know, if 5, 6, 8a goes in 9, they need to be able to take a 10 with something going down right. Then a6, 9, 3, and 6, they need another down right? If they have 1, it's going to be hard to have 2. If they have none, it can be a real problem for them. So I'm gonna stick one of the leftward A's in 8 or 9, and I'm gonna follow it up with a6, 9, 3 in 6 or 9, depending on where I played. Now, if it was combo, I'd probably start with 7, 3, 7, a, and 8, and then play a6, 9, 3, and 9, just so I can't potentially be comboed that hard between them, because the 3s match. Here, don't have to worry about that. Which card do I want more out of my hand? I don't know. Sometimes the 7-3 part can plus a 10 off the 6s from the middle, but it's probably not much. Yeah, I think I'll use up the 7-3, a7. Now I have to choose between 8 and 9. All seems about the same to me. Let's go 8. And check in on the other game. Alright, Deli's still thinking. Bad spot. Very tough. Now, it might be that going in 8 does work, and I just didn't calculate far enough. Again, looking quickly. But very scary. There's the question of, can he just go 1? 1 is possible. Something I didn't consider, and actually might make this just not bad at all, is 8, 6, 7, 8 has both 6 and 8, which was the point of Deli's last move. No idea how I didn't notice that till now. So Deli's probably looking to leave those squares open. So something like 8, 5, a6 in 1 is kind of appealing. If Turds blocks 8, say with a5, 7, 6, or say with 9, 5, 9, 5, something where he doesn't flip 9, so there's no reverse combo, but also he keeps a5, 7, 6 to cover Deli's 8s up. So 8, 5, a6 in 1, 9, 5, 9, 5 in 8. What happens there? That is the question that we will likely return to when we check if our opponent has moved. They have moved, so sadly we will never know. So I wanted a3, a6, 9, 3 in 9. Now, if they can take us, it gets pretty horrible. If they can't, it gets pretty good, but it's a pretty big risk. And they did have the chance to set up against 9. You know, if they have a card with an 8 up and an 8 down or whatever, you know, they can have set up there. So I am going to keep making them take A's. But we'll put it in a different square. We'll do one that they didn't have the chance to set up against that turn. Deli goes for the high combo play. I was suspicious of this. But why? It was because if 8, 6, 7, 8 ever combos in 2, stuff can combo back from 1. But maybe that's not a big worry, because maybe Deli is much more likely to play 8, 6, 7, 8 in 6 or 8, and it's Zell that's going to take in 2, which 8, 5, 7, 6 cannot punish at all. My instinct here is that Turds is playing for the win. And here that we're trying to force them to take 10s. So where's the positionally correct move for them? They have to set up a T or an S to be formationally sound. Now they don't know this, but if they did play in 6, I wouldn't be able to take it. I would be able to take it. A6, 9, 3 can take anything. But, you know, 6, if I can take, they're so far behind. So they do set up the T. They could take a 10. They did have double numbers going up, right, and down left. Wow. So how can we give them the biggest challenge now? T's are good. They control the key card. So if we play 9, 5, 7, 8, and 6, we go up 6, 4. They almost certainly double capture from 9. Hopefully we take away their better up card. They go up 6, 4. We take back one card with a6, 9, 3, and 4. They've had to take a 7 and a 9. The thing I like about this line is if I go in 6 and they go in 4, I can then go a 9, and they do have to take a 10. I've got to just keep giving them tough numbers to take. I don't have a way to make them take both my 9s down because my 5, 9, 9, 6 is pretty dead. And I don't see a good way to start in 7 or 9. So I'm going to give them the toughest cards I can. You know, if they go in 4 here, I'm going to grovel for a tie by going in 9. If they go in 9, I'm going to grovel for a tie by going in 4. But either way, one way, I force them to take a 10 that I'm not at all convinced they can take. And the other way, I force them to take both 7 and 9 in the same direction. So, assuming their hand was somewhat balanced, I force them to have 2 up cards remaining, which might be difficult. And that's the try. And Deli's just said, well, this turned into a game. Yeah, that game looks exciting, but what was the line I was going to calculate? I don't remember. 8-5, A6, 1? Is that what I was doing? No, it's Turds' turn. What was it? 9-5, 9-5, 8 was the move I was saying was my candidate move. Note 8, 6, 7, 8 also now has the plus and 6, so maybe that just gets wombo comboed. The problem is though, if Turds goes 8, if Deli can't take the combo immediately, it's hard for him to hold off. Because if he goes 8-5, A6 in any square, he flips something that is needed for the combo setup next turn. And so it's kind of complicated to calculate because, you know, if 9-5, 9-5 goes in 8 and Deli doesn't immediately go in 6, 8-5, A6 in 2 flips the card in 5. Suddenly Deli has no combo in 6. 8-5, A6 in 1 flips the card in 4. Suddenly the combos don't flip that many cards down the road. So I'm starting to feel like Deli's doing fine there. Alright, so we drew 1 up card out of their hand. Do they have the other? Again, we tested as much as we could, I think. We forced them to take 1-10. They managed to avoid having to take the other, and 1-9. That's not quite as much as I'm aiming for. I try to aim for, you know, I said 2 10s a game, forcing them to take it. But this is not bad. And they did have to play around the other 10, which I don't think they ever had covered, but we'll see now. On the other game, stuff is afoot. Again, 4 moves left, should be able to calculate it pretty well, but it does take time and effort, so we're gonna trust whatever Turds comes up with because Turds is a good calculator. Yes, we got it. They didn't have 2 ups, and they never did have that 10 covered. So if they had gone 4, we could have blocked 9, and they would have not had 7. So we managed the tie there again. We put in enough challenge. We couldn't force them to take 3 10s, which seems to be maybe our win condition, but we could force them to take just about 2, and that seems to be enough to hold the tie. So I'm going to call this a video on close combo. Been going almost an hour, but I think it's a very interesting game. You really got to know your formations. We saw a formational mistake. You got to know, like, to go into the T's, the S's, the Q's, but also the really tricky ones out of the 3 corners with cards in 1, 3, and 7, that if I go 2, the win's not 4, the win's 6. Or in positions like the Knight formation, 1, 4, 7, I think the best defense is 3 or 9, not 4. Sorry, 1, 6, 7, the best defense is 3 or 9. I think stuff like that is where the differences between good and great players in this rule set are made. And I think I only lost once despite having second turn every game, which is pretty good on this rule set. Though it's not that big a first turn advantage, so I shouldn't be crowing about it. Alright, looks like Turds did follow my main line. Kind of tempted to finish it off, but I'm kind of tempted to end the video. So I think I'm going to apologize and just call it a video.